Good morning, fifth graders. Today we're going to continue talking about place value, but our place value today is going to be with decimals. Now, as we talk about decimals, you had another video that you could have watched before this one that just did some review over decimals from fourth grade, and that's going to happen in this video with Miss Sanders. But I want to go a little bit deeper than the video went. So today you're going to need your journal, you're going to need your textbook. We're going to be looking at lesson 1-2, and we're going to be making reference to this foldable that we put inside our journal today. All right, so I went to the last problem that I did in my journal when we were doing problems yesterday. I'm going to go to the back of that page. Now I want to talk about what do we know about word form and decimals. Okay, word form and decimals. Well, we need to remember that anytime we see a decimal, we need to think of the word or say the word and. Okay, our decimal point when we read a decimal isn't 3.94. Okay, when we see this decimal, 3.94, we need to read it correctly and say 3 and 94 hundredths. So we're going to work on taking a decimal and writing it in words. Now, this is where if we get confused about our place value, we can use our chart and we can put numbers in our chart. Now, my advice to you is if you're using this chart, I would use a pencil so that I could erase anything that I put on there in case I don't want to keep it forever, you know? So let's look at that. All right, let's put 3 and 94 hundredths on our table. I was looking for a pencil, sorry. So we have 3.94. So 3 and 94 what? Hundredths. So this place value chart for decimals is going to be pretty handy. So let's go back to that page. Let's write it in words. So we have 3 and 94. 94 what again? Hundredths. So we talk about decimals, and we see that when we're talking about decimals that it has a THS at the end of the word. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that's what we really need to pay attention to. All right, let's try another one. Let's do a little bit bigger one. Let's say that we have 105 decimal 107. Okay, so I said it incorrectly. Now let's say it word form correctly. So we have, we cover up our decimal, we have 105. And, let's go back and look at that chart just so we don't make a mistake. So let's open back up to our yellow, back to my pencil. So it said we had 105 decimal 107. So 105 and 107 what? Thousandths. Thousandths. So let's write that correctly. So 100, notice it doesn't have THS on it because it's a whole number. 105 and 100, notice it says 100. 100 what? What place value is that? 100 thousandths. THS. All right, now using that place value chart is going to be pretty helpful, knowing what the very last place value is when we're in our decimal system. Now, so that was word form. Let's talk about expanded form. We're going to talk about expanded notation and expanded form. Now, expanded form is what you did in 4th grade. Now we're going to add a little bit to that in 5th grade with expanded notation. All right, so I'm going to write expanded form. Okay, now I'm going to take the same number we used at the top, 3 and 94 hundredths. Okay, now we need to write it with decimals. So we have 3, this is what you did in 4th grade, plus 9 tenths plus 4 hundredths. Again, we took this as in the ones, so it's just 3, plus the 9 is in the tenths, so we had 9 tenths, and then the 4 is in the hundredths, so we had decimal 0.4, because in this situation I wouldn't say and 4,000 or 4 hundredths. I'm just going to say 4 hundredths. Okay? Alright, this is exactly what you did in 4th grade. I'm hoping you're remembering. Alright, let's try our second number. 105 decimal 107. So we review. We found it to be 105 and 100. I left out a word there. Sorry. 7 thousandths. That happens. I'm apologizing for that. So I forgot 7. 107 thousandths. Okay. Now, we need to think about place value. What place value is this one in? It's in the hundredths. What place value is the 0 in? It's in the tens. What place value is the 5 in? It's in the ones. So we have 100ths. So we have 100 plus, do we have any tens? No. We have plus 5 ones. Now plus. Now let's go after. We said this was the what place value? The tenths. So we have point what? 1/10. Plus, we don't have any hundredths because we have a 0 there, so we don't have to write it down. But now we have 7 what? Thousandths. So we're going to put that decimal and then a 0, then a 0, then a 7. That represents 7 thousandths. Okay, again, this was expanded form. Expanded form. Now, I'm going to talk about 5th grade, and that is expanded notation. Okay, expanded notation. Now, as we go through this, I need you to listen. Okay, it's not difficult. Now, I'm going to turn my next page and I'm going to change colors. We're now going to be in expanded notation. It's going to look very similar to expanded form. Okay, it's going to look very similar. Okay, I'm going to take the same numbers we used before, 3 and 94 hundredths. Now, I want you to go back to your yellow paper or whatever color paper you had. And now we're going to go here. We're going to look here now. This is describing your expanded notation. This is going to be helpful in writing expanded notation. Now I'm going to get my pencil so that I can erase. Okay, so we had 3.94. We're going to write it on both of these. 3.94 and 3 in the ones, 0.9. 0.94. So, now, let's look at the decimal expanded notation first. Okay, everyone, good. We're going to be going back and forth. All right. To help with this, I'm just going to turn sideways and go back and forth with my notes, okay? Now, I'm going to go this way, 3 and 94 hundredths. Now we're going to be making parentheses. We have 3 values, so we're going to have 3 sets of parentheses. And in between those sets of parentheses, we're going to have addition sets. This is expanded notation. All right, let's go to that 3. We're going to make a multiplication problem to go in here. What place value is it? It's 3 times what? 1, because we're in the ones place. Because this is the ones, we have 3 times 1, because it is in the ones place. Okay, we're going to fill in 9 now. 9 times what? Well, what place value is the 9 in? The 9 is in the what? Tenths. So we have 9 times 1/10. Because again, this is the tenths place value. Now we're going to bring down our 4 times something. 4 times what? Well, what place value is that in? 4 times what? 100. Because it is in the hundredths place. So this is expanded notation with decimals. Okay, now let's look at expanded notation with fractions. So this is where we're going to use decimals in our expanded notation. This is how we're going to use fractions. All right, so let's go back to that yellow paper. We still have 3 wholes. So we still have 3 times what? 1. So again, we're going to have we have 3 numbers. So we're going to have 3 sets of parentheses. Add in between. So we have 3. What place value is the 3 in? Well, it's in the ones. It's in the ones place, so that's why we're using the number 1. Okay, now we look at our next number. We have 9 times something. Well, what place value is the 9 in when we're talking about fractions? It's in the 1/10. Well, didn't we say that is 1/10? Isn't this 1/10? So fraction, decimal, equivalency. They're equal. All right, so we know that this is times 1/10 because the 9 is in the tenths place. Let's bring down our 4. 4 times what place value? What place value is the 4 in? We wrote it under our chart. It's in the hundredths, so that's 100th. So we just found a decimal, fraction, equivalency. They're equal. So it's going to be 4 times, what is a fraction? 100th, because this is in the 4 is in the hundredths place value. All right, let's try our second number. It was a little bit bigger, but I bet we can do it. So we had 105 decimal 107. So I'm going to write that twice. 105 decimal 107. Okay, let's go back to our chart. I'm going to write it on both problems. Excuse me, I did that wrong. Getting ahead of myself here. So 105 decimal 107. I'm going to do underneath now. Second one, 105 decimal 107. All right, so let's go back and look. How can we determine how many parentheses we're going to need? Well, how many values are actually values that are not zeros? So we can count 1, 2, 3, 4. Now these numbers are important because they're placeholders. They're telling us we have 0 tens and 0 hundredths. But when we write them in our expanded form or expanded notation, we just don't use them. All right, so we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of parentheses. All right, so there's our 4 parentheses. We put addition in between them. Always, always addition, because we're adding those values together to create this number. All right, so then I can take my first place value, my 1. What place value, 1 times what place value can I multiply the 1 by? What place value is it in? It's 1 times what? 100. Okay, 0 is important, but it doesn't have anything that we're going to use in our expanded notation. So we're at the 5. What place value is the 5 in? It's in the 1s. So we have 5 times 1 because it's in the 1s place. All right, so now we go to our next value. We see a counting number. It's 1. What place value is a decimal? What are we going to multiply that 1 by? It's in the what place value? It's in the tenths. So 1 times 1/10. Okay, 0 is important. It's holding that place value, but it's no value there. So, but then we're going to write our 7. 7 times what place value? What place value is the 7 in? It's in the thousands. So make sure you write that correctly. 0.001. So again, we found the first number to be in the hundredths place value. Our second number that's not a 0 was in the ones place value. The next number, the 1, was in the tenths place value, and ultimately then we found the 7 to be in the thousands. So this is expanded notation with decimals. Now let's try it over here with fractions. Again, we count how many values that are not zeros, and we see 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know we add in between our parentheses. All right, now we take that first number. Just like before, I go back and look. What am I multiplying that 1 by that's in the front of our problem? What place value is it in? It's in the hundreds. So we have 1 times 100 because that 1 is in the hundredths place. We go back and look at 5. What place value is the 5 in? It's in the ones. So we have 5 times 1 because it's in the ones place. Okay, we bring down our next number, 1 times. What place value is that 1 in? That it's a fraction. We go back and look. It's in the tenths. How is tenths written as a fraction? Well, it's written as 1 over 10 because the 1 is in the tenths place value. Then we go to our 7. We go back and look at our paper. We find the 7. What place value is in the 7? It's in the thousandths. And what does thousandths look like as a fraction? It looks just like 1,000th because 7 is in the thousandths position. Now we're going to practice this today and tomorrow. So just keep trying, look at your notes, and you will do amazingly well. Okay, you have a form with problems to do. There's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is zeros in a decimal. Okay, so I'm going to turn my page over. Okay, we need to talk about the word equivalent. Equivalent. Okay. As we grow in math, our vocabulary gets bigger. And in this situation, equivalent is a bigger term for the word equal. So we're trying to make equal decimals. Now, what we need to learn when we talk about decimals as we get older is that this decimal is equal to this decimal. Okay? Adding zeros at the end of a decimal, and that's all there is. Notice there's no other value. We can put as many decimals as we want to or take them away, and it's still an equivalent decimal. Okay? We could have 1,712 and 1/10. Is that still 1/10? Yes. Or could it be 10,000? Tenths, hundreds, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths? But do these zeros, if we wrote them in expanded form, would we use those? No. So that means we could take them off and find out that 1,712 is the same thing as 1,712 and 1/10. These zeros right here can be taken off because that makes these two fractions, or excuse me, decimals equivalent. Okay? So we could add 100 zeros behind this one, and it would still equal this one. I could add 1,000,000 zeros behind my 3 here, and it would still be equal to this. So when we have all these zeros at the end, they're not changing its sincere value, that it is 0.3 or 3/10. Okay? So you're going to have some practice today with that concept. Making equivalent decimals. You're either going to take away zeros or add zeros. Okay? But remember, no matter how many zeros we add at the end of the decimal or take away, if the true numbers, the counting numbers stay the same, then they are equal. All right, you're going to do an amazing job. Do all your practice, take your time, and I will talk to you today about 10:50. If you have any questions, please have them ready. Have a great day.